following nightmare was inspired by true historical events. In February 1970, deep in the jungle of Hao Niga Province, Vietnam, a small U.S. Army unit assigned to the 6th PSYOPS battalion were conducting routine missions in support of Operation Wandering Soul. The soldiers were conducting repairs on their loudspeaker systems. This equipment was part of the audio system used to broadcast Ghost Tape Number 10. Ghost Tape Number 10 was a chilly audio recording of the voices of dead South Vietnamese men imploring the Viet Cong to surrender or face the prospect of eternal torment in the afterlife. During the repair mission, the unit fell victim to a sudden and ruthless ambush by the VC, resulting in mass casualties. Sergeant Gerald Pearson, Corporal Miguel Pacheco, Corporal Clint Miller, and Private First Class Will Barber escaped into the jungle where they stumbled upon what appeared to be a deserted cave. 4 days later, a combat search and rescue team managed to extract only 2 of the 4 soldiers from the jungle. Their injuries resembled those inflicted by a wild animal attack. The narrative you are about to delve into portrays the grisly events that unfolded in the cave as recounted to the rescue team chief by Sergeant Gerald Pearson and Corporal Miguel Pacheco. We were running for what seemed like days. The VC was hot on our trail. We could hear gunfire and screams in the distance, prompting us to keep moving. We pressed onward into the jungle, our every step haunted by the presence of venomous snakes, predators, and booby traps fashioned by the VC. In the nick of time, I grabbed Corporal Pacheco, averting him from stepping into a hidden pit of punji sticks. After an extended period, we had not encountered any VC patrols, nor did we hear any gunfire, troop movement, or suspicious sounds. It seemed that they had stopped their search efforts. We were tired, hungry, and exhausted. The heat and humidity were taking its toll on us. We sought refuge during the day within the jungle foliage and moved quietly under the cover of night. Lacking both a radio and a map, we relied on a compass and the North Star to guide us through the challenging jungle terrain. Our strategy was to maintain a consistent northward direction, aiming to reach an army post that we were aware of in that vicinity. The next thing I remember was hearing strange voices coming from a loudspeaker somewhere in the jungle. Initially, I thought it was the audio recordings from Ghost Tape Number 10. It sounded the same, but it wasn't. The language was in English. The chilling audio was that of American soldiers pleading for us to come forward out of the jungle and turn ourselves in to receive medical attention. The squad looked at me wide-eyed. They were spooked and suspicious. "I got a bad feeling about this, Sarge. What do you want us to do?" Pacheco asked. After pondering the situation for a few minutes, I said, "Let's move undercover towards the voices. It could be our guys." "Miller, fall back and keep a visual on the team. Pacheco, you lead. Guys, maintain visual contact at all times and watch out for booby traps." The broadcast got louder as we advanced towards the source. Strangely, as we got closer, voices began to distort frequently. Approximately an hour later, we stumbled upon a clearing within the jungle, and in the distance spotted what seemed to be a cave entrance. The entrance to the cave was almost concealed by the dense jungle foliage. It was at this location that we suspected the broadcast was originating from. We crept along the perimeter of the clearing, staying within the cover of the vegetation as we neared the cave. Suddenly, the broadcast stopped. Everyone stopped in their tracks. Corporal Pacheco turned to me and whispered, "Sarge, now what?" At that point, I ordered Miller and Barber to take up positions on both sides of the cave entrance, while Pacheco and I cleared the cave. Me and Pacheco entered the cave and immediately noticed something strange about the crunchy ground beneath our boots. The ground was covered in a brilliant snow-white expanse, which, upon closer inspection, revealed itself to be an abundant layer of salt. This anomaly was clearly man-made. Along the sides of the cave were empty burlap sacks along with full sacks of salt. Judging by the condition of the burlap sacks, this operation occurred long ago. The salt was brought here for a purpose. A mere 20 feet into the salt-covered cave, we stumbled into another oddity. A stone wall extended all the way to the ceiling, effectively blocking access to whatever lay hidden behind the cave entrance. The wall's height measured approximately 10 feet. In the center, a pair of weathered iron double doors secured with old chains and a lock. Directly positioned above the doors, cemented in the rock, was a large stone amulet adorned with strange symbols. On the doors, inscribed in white paint, was the words, "Ma Ka Rong." A million questions began to plague my mind. Morning came as little rays of sunlight made their way into the cave, lighting it up just enough to see. Suddenly, Miller and Barber came running inside and reported hearing possible VC movement in the area. In the heat of the moment, I ordered my squad to get the doors open so that we could take up positions inside. I believed that our chances of survival were higher hunkered down behind the stone wall than out in the open jungle. Miller broke the lock after several strikes with a heavy rock and released the chains. We pushed on the heavy iron double doors, but only the left one would open. A loud scrape echoed through the cave as the door slid open. A warm gust of foul-smelling air engulfed us. "I don't have a good feeling about this," Barber said. "Better in here than out there. Keep moving, soldier," I yelled. We pushed the heavy iron door closed with another loud scrape. The area was dark and heavy with a foul odor. We all turned our flashlights on to scan the area, revealing a vast room filled with skeletal remains and old shredded clothing. "What the fuck is this? Some sort of burial chamber?" Corporal Pacheco asked. "Dude, this ain't right, man. This ain't right," Miller responded. The atmosphere was tense. "Guys, keep it together. Keep your emotions in check. The VC doesn't know we're here," I stated. "I'll take first watch. You guys get some R&R until further notice." I made my way towards the doors to keep watch while the others slept. I took a prone position and aimed my weapon towards the entrance. As I laid on the cool stone floor, I had to keep slapping myself awake. I was exhausted. Apparently, I had fallen asleep. I was startled awake by Barber screaming for us to gather around, but his voice was coming from below. In the far left corner of the room, I could see that a trap door was opened, revealing stone steps leading down. We didn't notice the trapdoor earlier because it was completely covered with skeletal remains. Gun and flashlight in hand, I quickly descended the stone steps. When I got to the bottom, an unsettling feeling overcame me. I turned and saw my squad gathered around what appeared to be a stone sarcophagus with intricately elaborate carvings. The lid was halfway open. Laying inside the stone coffin was the body of a grotesque, old Vietnamese man. The corpse didn't have the appearance of being deceased for a long time. Miller shook his head. "This ain't right, man. I'm telling you, this ain't right." We decided to push the lid closed. It was heavy, but with the four of us, the lid slid over as we intended. "This is weird shit. I don't want anyone coming down here for any reason. Let's head upstairs," I said. Everyone nodded in agreement. We all walked up the stone steps quietly. Fear and unease was thick in the air. No one wanted to be here any longer. "It's going to be night soon. Get some rest, then we'll head out in the dark," I said. "We'll keep heading north as planned. Barber, you take first watch." With all the strange events running in my mind, it was difficult to sleep. Eventually, I dozed off. The next thing I remember was being jerked awake by the sound of the most horrifying scream below. It was Barber. Pacheco, Miller, and I sprang to our feet. Flashlights and weapons at the ready, we bolted towards the trap door. We looked at each other, aware that descending the stone steps was not our preferred option, but the urgency of Barber's situation left us with no choice. As Barber's screams of pain echoed through the cave, we could see the light beams from his flashlight jostling around the walls. We rushed down the stone steps. I turned my light in Barber's direction, but to my dismay, there was nothing to be seen. Everything went quiet. Barber's shredded uniform, boots, and flashlight lay scattered on the floor. The men rushed to the sarcophagus. The lid was resting on the ground. We peered into the stone coffin, only to discover emptiness. No blood, no lifeless elderly man, no Barber, nothing at all. Immediately, I turned to Pacheco and Miller, urgency in my eyes. "Get the fuck out now!" I shouted. Without hesitation, we sprinted up the stone steps and rushed toward the double doors. Desperately, we attempted to push open the massive iron doors, but strangely, they wouldn't budge. Pacheco, a burly soldier, began ramming the iron doors, but the doors held their ground. Suddenly, all our flashlights died at the same time. Everything went pitch black. In the darkness, I could hear something rapidly scuttling about. Suddenly, a horrifying scream erupted from Miller, seemingly coming from all directions. It sounded as if he was being violently dragged throughout the room. Pacheco and I continued pushing and pulling on the doors. Just then I heard Pacheco scream, accompanied by a loud thud. At the same time, the door scraped open, and moonlight crept into the room. Something grabbed my leg and I was sent flying into the wall behind me. Everything went black. The next thing I remember was a bloody-faced Pacheco yelling at me to get up. As I jumped up, I noticed that my uniform was shredded with blood everywhere. We made it through the doors and into the salted area. I turned around and saw the old man from the sarcophagus standing at the doors on the edge of the salt border. He was holding Miller's decapitated body effortlessly. He licked his bloody fangs as he stared at me with a wicked smile. Me and Pacheco ran into the jungle with no care. Fueled by fear and adrenaline, we kept running, only stopping to catch our breath. Sometime during the day, we heard the ghost tape number 10 broadcast in the jungle again. This time, it was broadcasting in Vietnamese. We bolted towards the source of the broadcast, hoping that it was our guys. It was our lucky day. The combat search and rescue team that extracted Sergeant Pearson and Corporal Pacheco conducted a secondary mission to try and locate the bodies of Corporal Miller and PFC Barber. The bodies of Corporal Miller and PFC Barber were never found. To this day, they are considered missing in action. The cave was never located. After Corporal Pacheco was discharged from service, he relentlessly pursued theologian studies. He was ordained into priesthood in the winter of 1976. In 1978, Sergeant Pearson was found dead in a dingy apartment in Chicago, Illinois. He died of self-inflicted knife wounds on his wrists and ankles. On the wall, written in blood, was the words, "Ma Karong," vampire.